ABBA were global pop royalty, sparkle, harmonies, and choruses you could sing after one listen. On stage, they looked untouchable. Off stage, they were two married couples carrying private strain. Long before the public sensed anything, the seams were pulling. When both marriages ended in divorces that stunned millions, the clock on the band quietly started ticking down. Decades later, Benny Andersson would speak plainly about why they stepped away without fanfare and how deeply it hurt him. The story starts with Benny Andersson, a boy who fell hard for music at age 6 when he was given an accordion. That simple gift rewired his childhood. Unlike most kids who move on to the next hobby, he stuck with it, stretching lesson time so he could keep exploring. By 10, a piano arrived at home, and he taught himself by ear, dropping the needle on records and copying what he heard. Elvis Presley's Treat Me Nice jumped out of the speaker and into his imagination. Odd inspiration for a Swedish kid in the 1950s, maybe. But it planted the seed of a writer who would someday blend folk, pop, and disco into a sound the whole world knew instantly. Music meant more to him than school. At 15, he left formal classes to chase it full-time. He wasn't alone. His girlfriend, Christina Grunwald, loved singing, too. They performed together in a band called Albert Spellman Lag, built a life early, and had 2 children while Benny's career began to take shape. In 1964, Benny joined the Heapstars, Sweden's biggest rock band of the 1960s, often tagged the Swedish Beatles. Concerts were packed, charts were theirs, and with the blonde hair and boyish energy, Benny became a teen idol. But he wasn't just a face. He was the engine, writing #1 songs and proving he had a gift for melodies that stick. 2 years later, in 1966, he crossed paths with Bernos of the folk-leaning hootenanny singers. Bern came from Swedish folk, Benny from rock and pop. One writing session, and it clicked. Casual meets turned into a partnership. By 1969, 2 more crucial voices entered. Agnia Feldskog and Annie Fred Lyngsted. Frida, the chemistry, musical and romantic, was immediate. They even tried a cheeky group name Festfolk, which in Swedish can mean both party people and engaged couples. The name faded. The bond didn't. Then came 1974 and a song that changed their lives. Waterloo performed at the Eurovision Song Contest in Brighton, England. Flashy outfits, hand-on-hip confidence, and a wink of camp, then victory. Overnight, ABBA went global. The formula was brilliant. Benny and Bern wrote and produced. Agnia and Annifrid delivered goosebump vocals. Through the 1970s, the hits kept coming, and worldwide sales ultimately topped 150 million. Benny's keyboards gave ABBA its signature shimmer. Continental pop lightness folded into disco groove and big-hearted ballads. He layered harmonies and instruments with care, so the sound felt lush yet radio-ready. The look mattered too. Glittering costumes, choreography, and savvy early music videos built a visual brand others soon copied. But success has a price. The pressure, workload, and public scrutiny began to erode the relationships that powered the band. What we heard as perfect pop often came from people running on fumes. From the outside, ABBA were unstoppable. Inside, the pace was brutal. Tours across Europe, the United States, Japan, and Australia. Press calls, studios, flights, repeat. Hotels became home. Interviews replaced quiet evenings. Reporters rarely stuck to the music. They asked about marriages, outfits, and future plans. Space to breathe was scarce. Annifrid, Frida, carried grief that most fans never saw, including painful family losses during peak years. Yet, the show had to go on. Night after night, she stepped into sequence and sang songs full of light, while holding herself together in the wings. The gap between stage glow and private sorrow grew, and the weight lingered. The couples once a symbol of their unity began to buckle. Berrios and Agnia Feldskog married in 1971, long before ABBA became a brand. At first they seemed to balance love, work, and family. But constant travel, media attention, and raising children from hotel rooms took their toll. By 1979, they divorced. Fans were shocked. Tabloids pounced. Benny Andersson and Annifrid married in 1978, a bright note in the band's story. But the same stresses reached them. Life on the road, the blending of private and professional, the relentless spotlight. By 1981, they divorced as well. ABBA wasn't just a band. It was 2 marriages, 2 creative partnerships, 1 shared business. When the marriages ended, everything changed. The heartbreak bled straight into the music. ABBA always wrote emotions you could feel, but post-divorce the words cut closer to the bone. Knowing me, knowing you carried the quiet resignation of a breakup. The winner takes it all, sung by Agnia, felt like a confession because in many ways it was. Fans connected even more deeply because the song sounded lived in and true. By the early 1980s, the chemistry that once sparked in the studio dimmed. Sessions that used to be playful turned heavy. Simple choices, arrangement key, a line of lyric felt loaded. On the outside, crowds still filled arenas and records still sold. On the inside, the well was running dry. Here's the twist. Many outside Sweden missed. While the world adored them, ABBA weren't always embraced at home. In 1970s Sweden, critics leaned toward political folk, gritty rock, and later punk. Music seen as authentic, confrontational, and caused. Against that backdrop, ABBA's polished pop, sparkle, and variety show gloss looked suspect to tastemakers. They were labeled commercial, soulless, manufactured. It didn't matter that the songs were sophisticated or emotionally honest. What mattered to parts of the Swedish press was that the group seemed to chase stardom, not social change. In 1975, Stockholm even saw mass protests against the Eurovision Song Contest. The rally wasn't about ABBA only, but since Eurovision launched them, they became the lightning rod for a broader fight over pop versus authentic art. Agnetha also endured relentless objectification. Beyond her extraordinary voice and writing, tabloids fixated on her looks and private life. This was while she was managing performance anxiety, motherhood, and the breakup with Bern, an exhausting invasion. The clothes became punchlines: platform boots, mirror-bright fabrics, playful silhouettes. Critics smirked. Time turned the look into an icon of the 1970s. Meanwhile, the music deepened. By 1981's The Visitors, the sound was darker and more introspective. Songs about alienation and unease. And yes, political shadows. The album was banned in the Soviet Union for overtones officials disliked. Imagine that. Dismissed as frivolous in one place, censored as provocative in another. ABBA forever in the contradiction. ABBA didn't end with a cheerful farewell or a tabloid blow-up. The curtain just fell. After The Visitors in 1981, there was no formal breakup in 1982, only a gradual drift. The studio, once a playground, felt haunted. They could still deliver perfect takes, but the spark had gone. Rather than force it, they let silence have the last word. Bern and Benny found new oxygen in musicals. Chess and later Christina from Duvet, proving their storytelling gifts in a different arena. Agnia and Annie Friedrich launched solo careers. Agnia rediscovered her own sound outside the group's orbit, and Annie Friedrich explored producers and styles. ABBA's framework couldn't accommodate because there was no official "we're done." Rumors never stopped. Maybe a tour, another album. Years later, Benny clarified the wounds from the divorces, and the relentless grind made it impossible to pretend nothing had happened. As Annie Fred put it, they had grown out of each other. Not scandal, life. Behind the perfectly produced TV appearances, Benny was unraveling in ways fans couldn't see. His marriage to Annie Friedrich ended in 1981, sudden, quiet, and deeply painful. He fell in love with Swedish TV producer Mona Nerklet and remarried that same year. Outwardly clean, inwardly complicated. The split wasn't just personal, it shifted the fragile balance inside. ABBA. There was another shadow: alcoholism. Benny didn't speak about it publicly until 2011, but the struggle had been there during and after the band's run. Drinking blunted stress and heartbreak while blurring the creativity that made him great. The same man who could sit for hours refining harmonies and textures drifted into loops where ideas were harder to reach. He kept working, but the battle was real, private, and long. Then came 2025, and a loss that cut deep. Michael B. Tretto Abbas, longtime sound engineer and one of Benny's closest studio allies, passed away. Tretto's fingerprints are on that unmistakable ABBA. The stacked vocals, the inventive overdubs, the gloss that still sounds fresh. Losing him wasn't just losing a colleague. It was losing a friend who'd been there for the long nights and big leaps. Grief pulled old memories into sharp focus. The divorces, the band's slow unraveling, and the years Benny surrendered to addiction. Some scars, he realized, never fully heal. When ABBA returned in 2021 with Voyage, their first album in 40 years, it felt like the world had been holding its breath. Older fans lined up beside people who met the songs through films, stage shows, and the internet. Alongside the record came the ABBA Voyage concert experience in London, cutting-edge avatars of the group as their younger selves. It was Benny's kind of innovation, architecting, sound, and presentation. So the legacy could live without demanding the impossible from four people who had already given so much.